I have nothing to say at the beginning of this. So, it's happened. I don't have a single weird thing to share, except that I was at Newbury Comics today. I was at Newbury Comics. I haven't been to Newbury Comics in a long time. Do you know Newbury Comics?
Do I know Newbury Comics?
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't,
I remember Newbury Comics was on Newbury Street.
It still is.
It was an empty first floor room in a brownstone with a bunch of folding tables and like big cardboard boxes filled with punk buttons and EPs, and there's hardly any lights on. It was the real deal. This is like 1970. I moved to Boston in 76, I think. So it must have been like 77 or 78.
Wow, so like the real original Newbury Comics.
Oh yeah, no, this was not. This was a work in progress, shall we say?
Right.
But
so all the pins, the punk pins.
I still got some
PIL.
I still got some of the Buzzcocks, PIL, the Plasmatics. I had a Clash pin, Gary Newman pin. I love that stuff. I was totally into all that. I'm sure some of them are worth something, but I don't know where they are. I do know where they are now, but I've only got like a few left, and they're probably all rotted away by now. But
it's funny. I mean, you were one of the few people that I felt was really connected a little bit to the punk scene when I was in college. And I had known a couple of people. My friend Brooke was very, very connected to the punk scene in New York, very much the artistic punk scene. And I think when I had seen Black Flag in Brattleboro, it might have been in Bennington, Vermont at the Armory. And I was a resident assistant for teenage kids who were like at the Bennington College July program.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an outing, go and see a concert. So I took the people under my charge who were in the house, in Booth House. And I said, let's go and see some music. So we got in the van and I drove them down to Bennington to the Armory. And we walk up there and there's a guy with long hair sitting on top of the tank outside of Bennington Armory. And one of the kids goes, "Hi, Henry." And Henry goes, "Hey, kids, you here to see the show?" And you're like, "Yeah." And like, "Cool, groovy. Go on inside. I'll be in a minute." He's sitting on a tank.
Yeah, Henry Rollins.
And we went in and the band started playing. And that was when I realized I was in deep trouble.
Yeah.
I was responsible for teenagers in the mosh pit at the Black Flag concert. And Henry came out and he dipped his hair, long hair, into the audience. People grabbing his hair. And he's like, "Yeah, this ain't any hair club for men bullshit." And then he looked at the audience. He goes, "All right." And then the band started. It was fantastic. It was a great show, but I was terrified the entire time that somebody was going to break an arm.
Oh, wow. They're probably safer there than probably crossing the street, honestly.
By themselves, yeah.
Yeah, no.
It was great, actually.
That reminds me of two other stories, which is one time, my friend Bob told me that one day he was walking around, he was really depressed, and he just wanted to see a funny movie. And he was just walking from movie theater to movie theater, and then he saw it. Platoon.
No.
It's got to be like F Troop, right?
Yeah.
Platoon. It's like funny, like... Yeah, Private Ryan or something like that. Bob said, I crawled out of the movie theater on like my hands and knees. He said, I wasn't even walking. And the other one I think of is one time when when I was married, Jane said, "Let's go see." There's this Broadway show called Pillow Man, or
I don't know Pillow Man, but
it's something like Pillow Man. And Jane was like, "It'll probably be funny. It's like Pillow Talk." No, it's about a guy who kills little children with razor blades.
Oh, that sounds great.
And like
inspiring.
The best part of Pillow Man is that Jane and I were like, and we just started giggling.
No.
And we had to really bolt it down to wait for the intermission so we could flee out of there. And we just laughed. As soon as we got outside the theater, we were just laughing openly. It's like, and then it became sort of a byword that we use right now. Like, Pillow Man,
man.
It's like Pillow Talk. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah. So, investigate before you commit.
Well, it's true, but also, sometimes you just don't know. Like I went with Kurt Unala, and someone I was in a relationship at the time with, we went to see Titanic when it came out, and, you know, with DiCaprio and all that stuff. And we just found it excruciatingly awful. Like every scene we found terrible.
Right.
And, you know, when the woman like drops something into the ocean or something at the end, Kurt just breaks out laughing. We just laughed through the entire ending because we just thought it was so stupid. And we walk out and everybody else is in tears and they're looking at us with such abject hatred.
Yeah.
Like, you bastards people.
You bastards.
Don't you have a heart? Don't you know?
It's the stupidest movie. Yeah.
It was so dumb. Kurt was like, the old woman on the railing, so stupid.
Yeah, great.
Speaking of stupid, you said we should read Confessions by St. Augustine.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried.
You actually
attempted it. Yeah, I did. I got an audiobook. But holy moly, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Is it? I'm sorry, I didn't read it at all. I just thought that was a suggestion. I didn't know you were going to actually like run ahead and actually do something.
Well, I thought I'd try it. You know, I never did read it in philosophy. I never read it in English.
I mean, the reason why it's an interesting book, you know, it's like Utopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
also
like
difficult to take, but
difficult
worth
to
it. Yeah,
plow through. But the thing about Confessions is that it's him. It's a slice of life of the Roman Empire in northern Africa in 450 AD.
It's around 300 actually. So AD.
So
he's born in 360 between. He was born like, I think he lived to be like 80 years old. So it was like 280 to 360 was his life. Confessions wasn't his latest. The last book was City of God.
Right.
Which I did read a lot about him. So he was a Berber, and his mother's Saint Monica is a big deal. And we know actually a nun named after his mother, Sister Monica Ward. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Ward took on the name Monica. But anyway, what got us into this was that Yale professor that you turned me on to. That, of course, much more interesting was just listening to him talk about St. Augustine, the lecture that you sent a link to. I thought that was fantastic.
Okay, so you watched that lecture.
I did, and I actually watched the 5 lectures leading up to that one.
Yeah,
they're amazing.
You just know when people have devoted a lifetime to something. You know, like they're really into it and they're really delivering.
We'll have to. It's the Yale free lecture series on YouTube. And I've forgotten his name, but we'll have to send that separately to Julia because I don't have any reference for her right now.
But it's like 19 classes on the fall of the Roman early Middle Ages.
Like
it's the early
200 to 1000, 800 years of
the best part. When it's not for amateurs. This is for historians who like it. Like
uncut, the raw dark ages, pre-dark, so dark. It's dark. But, interestingly, when you read Confessions, there are a couple of things that are interesting. I mean, it's weird. He, for a Catholic saint, he certainly got around a lot and partied quite a bit, right? Confessions is sort of like his attempt at like, I was kind of a party boy. I was going to Milan, and then we went back to Rome, and then, we partied in Milan and we partied in Rome, and we stole these pears, and he kind of got into why he stole the pears. They weren't even good. They didn't try to eat them. They stole them and threw them away. He went through the whole idea of sin. But what's really hard is just his incredible devotion to God, so it's sort of this, as a non-theist, it just sounds so, I'm sorry to say this, it sounds like a waste of intellect because he's clearly brilliant. And it's really interesting how he analyzes everything, but he's so bought into this idea of feeling guilty about everything that he does because he thinks God is judging him on every single thing that he does. He's wrestling with the ideas, good and evil, right? I mean, what is evil? What is good? With the presupposition that there is evil and that there is good. And did I do evil when I stole the pears? Did I do evil when I was fornicating my way through Milan? I mean, what was Milan like in 320? Right? That is even before the White Army. That's a That is 1,000 years before the White Army shows up to Milan and says, give us all your money. And they're like, actually, why don't you just go down to
here's
Firenze.
Half of what you asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go to Florence.
Go to Florence and give them what for? That's 1,000 years earlier.
Oh yeah.
Milan is, Milan's a party town. So pretty interesting. I mean, that part is pretty interesting. If only it was like an interesting recount of his escapades and his philosophical thoughts. It's just that probably because of his mother. His mother is so devout, but he's not. In the beginning of his life, he's a Neoplatonist. And then he is there's an offshoot of Neoplatonism. All right, I have to look it up. Shoot. I didn't know about this, so maybe I'll edit out my silence, but I want to.
Okay, go ahead.
Augustine of
Hippo.
Yeah, Augustine of Hippo, Christian theologian. Right. So Manichaeanism. Yeah.
Well, that's not Neoplatonist. That's Manichaeanism is coming from Persia, Iran. That's
right.
Ahura Mazda, dualistic religion. There's the god of light, which is, I think, Mazda, and then there's the god of evil.
I think, isn't that Zoroastrianism?
Am I mixing the two up?
Well, right, because this is a very short-lived religion. It's not Ahura Mazda.
That's Zoroastrianism.
That's Zoroastrianism.
I think Manichaeanism may be related to it, or
yeah, it's a combination of Platonism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, it's like some little something for everybody. Rabbinic Judaism, Gnostic movements, ancient Greek religion, and it started in 216. These are really interesting because it's an extinct major world religion, and it's already in place in the 3rd century. It was founded in the 3rd century, founded around by the prophet Mani.
Mani, M-A-N-I, right?
Yeah, an Iranian prophet.
Yep.
Iranian or Persian? A Persian prophet at the
time.
Same
thing. Iran and Persia are basically synonymous to a large degree.
Was Iran a nation? Anyway, I mean,
Persia was a kingdom that existed for thousands of years, and it was basically contiguous with Iran.
Right.
Iran was the heartland of the Persian Empire. I hope.
No, I think you're right. So Mani believed in the teachings of Buddha, Zoroaster, and Jesus, and believed that the teachings were incomplete and that the revelations were for the entire world to move. The world is losing light, is the idea. And I don't even know if there's if it's important that people bring more light into the world, or if it's just fatalist that the world started with more light and is moving to a place of less light. And what we need to do is slough off the body and get ready to move to the realm of light when we pass from this world of darkness. And they also, I think there was a sense that the God of the Old Testament is evil, and that the God of the New Testament that Jesus talks about is good. So anyway, St. Augustine sort of was into this bit of kookiness and then moved into Neoplatonism through his study of Hellenistic philosophy. So all of that before he finally converted to Christianity.
So it's an interesting slice of life.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of where these people are coming from and what's happening around that time. But I'm sorry, I didn't read the Confessions myself.
Well, I would just pick little parts of it. The truth is, it's really hard to take the whole thing. You just fall asleep. But there are interesting bits. I may go back, and listening to it maybe is how you fall asleep while you're reading. But it's like he does get into his like a philosophy of time. I want to kind of know how he deals with the notion of time. Because the philosophical points are interesting. But the religious points are, for me, just not.
They're not happening.
Not really.
So what about Tucci?
Early?
What about Tucci in Italy? What did you think of that?
Great. I saw 2 episodes, and I thought it was wonderful.
You saw the first 2?
I saw the first 2, and of course the autogrill bit is just wonderful. Although I can't imagine watching like 12 episodes where so much of it is just Stanley Tucci taking a bite and going,
"Yeah,
oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's great."
Yeah, I think 2 episodes is perfect.
Yeah.
I think 2 episodes was just great. And it genuinely seems like Stanley's really enjoying himself. And I just like he doesn't have he doesn't really interject himself much into the thing at all. He's very sort of transparent. It's really about everybody else. But
he's very fluent. I mean, he's speaking to people in their language, which is really nice. It's refreshing.
And it looks really nice.
Yeah.
It looks really nice. We heartily recommend it to everybody out there in TV land. Check out Tucci in Italy. It's
on Disney now, so that it's easier for if you have like a Disney account. I didn't have whatever it was on originally. I didn't have that account, but Disney bought it.
Mm-hmm.
Just handy. And I don't remember what he was. Oh, there was sort of like modern takes. The first episode was great, actually, because it was about offal. It was about peasant food. And it really gave me a different view on at least northern or middle Italian cooking, in Tuscan cooking, right? That the emphasis is not on what the rich would eat. Like if you're in
Lampredotto. Yeah,
the whole Lampredotto. Breakfast in Firenze is the fifth stomach of the cow, chopped up on a bulky roll, right?
Right, and meant to as an impersonation of eel.
That's right, lamprey eel. And there used to be eels in the Arno there that are extinct that used to be eaten, but that was more of an upper class.
Right,
so this would be the imitation for the peasants.
Yeah, this is like Faco lampreys, and so now it's haute cuisine now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that peasant food is the hip food.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that this is as true if the further north you get. I'm thinking of, what is the town that Bruce Sterling lives in?
Turin.
He's moved to Turin. In Torino, there's definitely more of a sense of like, you still have that, the upper crust is still kind of has a hold. You'd think in Florence that would be more the case, but it seems that the culture of Florence is more geared toward, at least food-wise, is more geared toward the new treatments of peasant food and the celebration of regular folk in terms of the cuisine, at least the way I saw it there. And when I was in Florence, that was, I didn't try the fifth tripe for breakfast. I would have if I had known that it was a thing.
The thing they made one thing that was just pornographic. It looked so good. It looked my meters are now spiking. Is my voice frying up?
You don't sound like you're frying. Say something.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
No, you look good.
I don't know, just weird. It just spiked up. There's something where they sliced it really thin, and then they put it with meat and rolled the meat up into a roll and tied it with string. I think, what was the stuff? They had this one episode where in the Carrara marble, the marble.
Yes, it was.
place.
It was in the marble, the town where they mine the marbles for. Well, like for the
it's the Carrara marble. Of course, I'm forgetting the word for quarry.
I know what it was. It was lardo.
The name
that's like
says it
scrapple.
all.
That's like the scrapple of Italy. It's
and
like,
they took it and they packed it into like bricks, right? And they put in this marble tub with all this salt.
With herbs and salt. It was basically fat it pounded flat and then packed in herbs and salt in marble. And then basically sealed off and aged for, I forgot how long they said, but like 6 months.
Right. And then they pull it out.
And it's lardo.
Then they slice it really thin. And they put it between other pieces of meat. And oh my God. I mean, let me tell you.
Sounded ridiculous.
Already.
Yeah.
This is going to be a short episode.
Yeah. I got to find some of that stuff. Yeah. That looked great. I don't know. I mean, the idea of just eating pure pork fat sounded a little excessive to me, but every time anybody in that village talked about it, they talked about it with reverence, right? Lardo.
Yeah. Well, they're slicing it really thin. It's not like they're eating it like cheddar cheese.
It's like butter. Yeah.
It's an accompaniment to provide, lubrication and whatever taste is.
These people are climbing up into the mountains to chisel out the rock. I mean, they can eat whatever the heck they want.
Can eat whatever the hell they want.
It's the tourists that will die.
Yeah.
The bus, they get back on the bus after your lardo, load up on the lardo and get back on the bus and then get a massage. Yeah. So, I mean, both episodes were great. I would watch more of them. Watching the food being made, all of that is really cool. Watching Stanley Tucci enjoy it and find new ways to say it's good He never says, no, it's not for me, man.
Yeah.
I can see what you're seeing this stuff, but it's disgusting.
No.
Yeah.
He
No,
doesn't do that. But it is different because I've seen like a couple episodes of like the Anthony Bourdain shows.
Yeah. I haven't seen that yet.
It's a different vibe. It's a completely different vibe. It's much more sort of rowdy, but I like the pace of Stanley's thing. I like the pace of Stanley's thing, and it's very quiet, and I dug it. I thought, yeah, but I mean, 10 episodes of that, and you're going to want to stick needing, you know, you're not going to like it as much.
Or go to Italy. You want to go eat some of this stuff for sure. Did you get a chance to watch any of your Friends and Neighbors?
No, sorry.
I think that's a great show.
Are you commanding?
I think I'm going to command you to watch.
It's on what, Disney or Apple?
It's on Apple TV. Maybe you can get a free trial or something.
Yeah, like my fourth in a row.
Your fourth in a row free trial. How many times will they do it?
I don't know. We're going to find out. I got my last one. I didn't even realize the last one I got was via Amazon. I got my Apple TV thing via Amazon. Okay, so I'll do Friends and Neighbors.
Yeah, it's very good.
What about Andor? Did you watch?
Yeah, I did.
Second season of Andor?
I did indeed.
And because of that...
So lately I can't sleep. So I get up at 3 and I watch stuff. So I'm like loaded up. I'm loaded for bear in terms of shows that I've been watching.
And I went back and watched the first season with my daughter.
Andor. Yeah, that was one. I wish I had seen Andor 1 all the way through again.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good.
It's a different animal than all the other Star Wars stuff.
I mean, other than Rogue One. I mean, because it's...
Right.
But Rogue One opened the door. Like, Rogue One gave you sense of where you could take this. And maybe we discussed this the last time, but what I find fascinating about Andor, to a certain degree, it really adds something. And it doesn't forsake what came before it. Like, it doesn't say, "I'll forget all that crap."
Right.
Forget the 9 movies and things like that. This is a reboot of this. It's not. It's interesting how it can be cynical and be so Le Carré, you know, in a way. It's very much like John Le Carré writing Star Wars.
Yeah.
But it fits still. It doesn't. I mean, they take the clothing, the architecture, the cute little droid action. They keep all those elements and they make it work. I think it's fascinating how it doesn't invalidate your feelings about the other movies.
And it's funny, there's only one character who survives into the major canon from the Andor series. And it's the woman, the noble woman who I can't...
Mon Mothma.
Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
Who has really very little story from the movies. And this really fills out, like, it's really deep what goes on with her. It's really intense.
Did you watch all of the series of the second season?
I did, yeah. But then I'd forgotten. I remember only bits and pieces of the first. I remember the antique dealer, you know, and he's wonderful. And his character is fantastic and dropping off. What's his name? You know, I don't remember much of when he's sort of escaping that town under Empire control. So there's some things that I should probably go back and rewatch. But when he starts the ship transport, stealing the transport.
Stealing the transport or stealing like the TIE fighter thing? That's the beginning of season 2, is Cassian Andor impersonating a test pilot and stealing.
Oh yeah, that I have, but I mean that was great. The opening is fantastic.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. And then landing, and they're like, it's not a good situation.
No,
let's not give everything away, but it's not.
Give it. I don't. You know, I'm tired of. No, we can give it away. People can block their ears if they don't like it. What I found, which is not going to probably sound very good if you don't remember the first. What I like is on second viewing, you understand a little more about what's going on, and it's interesting how your opinion of people changes. Like Mon Mothma, you know, is so elegant and, you know, so wonderfully attired and has such a wonderful way of speaking that and she's doing a noble thing. The second time you watch it, it starts to erode a little bit. Well, she sacrificed, you know, basically it's mainly about her trying to cover up 400,000, you know, a big pile of money. You know, that's basically her entire story throughout.
Oh yeah, going to the rebel movement.
Right. I mean, she's providing funding to the rebel movement, but she needs to cover it. She needs to cover a shortfall, and to do that, she basically sacrifices her daughter. She basically is willing to give up her daughter, and also
feed her daughter to the gangster, essentially, marry her daughter off to the gangster. Daughter doesn't want to do it.
Did the daughter not want to do it?
Daughter does not want to marry that guy.
But not because the guy's a gangster or anything. She just doesn't like the guy.
Because he's a jerk, yeah.
Right. And then also she also sets up her husband too.
Yeah.
And she makes fun of the husband all the time. And you can tell, she's constantly she doesn't care for her husband anymore, but she lies to him to try to throw the ISB off the scent. So you're just like, and then the whole thing comes apart with the guy Take Colma, and you remember that she goes. It's a fellow guy from Chandrila, and she turns to him to help her with the $400,000 problem, and he's the one who puts her in contact. But later on, he starts to come unglued, and he basically says, "I need to be bought off."
Right,
and they whack him.
Things worked out well for you, but not so well for me.
Yeah.
And
the
art dealer, what is his name?
Luthen Rail.
Luthen. Yeah, Luthen is basically like, yeah, we know how to deal with that. And she's like, no, don't do that. It's great.
And he says to her, it must be easy for you not to have to make these decisions.
Right. Like, what do you think? What do you think is going on here? And it's chilling. It's chilling. You're fighting an evil regime.
No, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Timely.
And I think some of those, as I mentioned before, when Damon was on the thing, that whole thing in Narkina 5, the whole factory where they're all dressed in white and they're assembling these items, is magnificent.
Yes.
Magnificent. The whole thing is Anyway, I could go on and on and on. But
Prison Break. There's a lot that happens in season 1. I need to go back and rewatch it.
Oh, season 1, season 2 is fine. Season 1 is head and shoulders. I mean, season 2 is just merely really, really good. Season 1 to me is extraordinary. Music's great. When I rewatched it, I realized they redid the title music for every episode. It's the same song, but the instrument changed. They do it in a different style. Like one episode, like the Narkina 5 episode is done a la Tangerine Dream, Berlin style synthesizer music. There's another one where it's done with a string quartet, another one where it's done with a small orchestra, another one where it's done in a different style every time. You don't notice it, except when you go back and you watch it again.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
Anyway.
And then have you gone back to Rogue One? Because isn't that sort of the culmination of all of this?
Yeah, I rewatched Rogue One. Rogue One is definitely straddling the two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
The old world of Star Wars, and it really is a transitional thing between Star Wars and Andor. But again, it all works. It all works, and none of it seems really bad. Like they don't make any cringe moves during any of this stuff. Again, I think it's fascinating how the more important thing is how flexible the schema is, that you can do this. Like take Wicked. Right?
Yeah.
Wicked's a reimagining of The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum.
Yeah.
Wicked's it's a fine book, but you really have a feeling that it really doesn't have much of a connection with what L. Frank Baum was doing.
I mean, the more I liked reading the book. I enjoyed the book because that was before Wicked Mania happened, before it was a movie, before it was a musical.
Right.
It was just a book when I read it, and I thought, oh, that's a clever reimagining. But then I went back and as my kids were growing up, I had read every single one of the Oz books to them.
Okay.
And multiple times, as a matter of fact, because I was reading to them every night. It's amazing, actually, how many books you can go through when you read, every night for 7 years. L. Frank Baum, his vision was more radical and darker than, the original Wizard of Oz 39 movie.
30, I think.
36. His vision was darker and more complex. And Wicked, the book, was darker and more complex. But it did this kind of equivocation about, Glenda the Good Witch is actually not good, and Elphaba is not necessarily good nor evil. Her sister is not, her sister is born with a disability. Elphaba is teased for the color of her skin, sort of a strange hero. And the Wizard of Oz, of course, is diabolically bad. So that's not entirely absent in the original books. But Glinda is not really bad. She's just more complex in the books. At this point, though, I just don't like any of it because it's kind of moved on now where it's replacing canon in a strange way that I think doesn't entirely fit.
Yeah.
And I'd rather people actually get to know some of the other books, like Ozma of Oz, or, the TikTok Man, or the TikTok. I mean, some of the books are really strange, completely bizarre. And he does like, in my books, I talk about this whole merit economy. L. Frank Baum, he created a merit economy in the Emerald City, 120 years before me.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. It's just in this kind of fantasy world. So it doesn't threaten anybody.
Right. Yeah, I guess the point I was trying to get at is, I'm just surprised because to a certain, I know people say, oh, Star Wars, that's just for kids. And yeah, it is good for kids, but I don't think it's entirely for kids. And more important, I guess what's interesting is how Andor doesn't feel jarring. It doesn't feel like somebody is just sort of like cannibalizing an existing intellectual property and just basically paying no attention to it, just like stealing the labels off of it and moving ahead.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a very thoughtful, determined, that really, uses a lot of the elements and sticks true to a lot of stuff. The interesting thing is there's no Jedi. That's the thing about Andor.
Yeah, and the entire thing, there's no wizards, right?
Right. There's no supernatural anything. It's all about just people muddling through.
Right.
So there's no lightsabers.
Yeah, even Luthen he does not have any special power. That would be the guy you'd think would have some force power, but he doesn't.
No, there's no force. And stuff like that.
That is strange. That is the only series where there isn't any force. I think. I mean, there's Solo, right? A Star Wars story. I don't think there's any force magic in that one. But I mean, one other series.
Yeah,
that was a one-off movie. One other series I thought was great. I don't know if you ever gave it a try. Was Clone Wars, the animated series.
Yeah, I watched like 5 of them, and it didn't do it for me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're fun, much in the same way that, like, The Mandalorian to me, that's an example of something where it's just like, yeah, this is not.
You think it's really gone too far afield?
It's just like it's unrelated. Like, you don't even really need Star Wars at all to understand
I feel like
The Mandalorian.
Well, they're trying to explain what Mandalore is and the lost culture and
right. But you
the
don't
importance
need
of that.
You don't need it, like, has no relationship to Star Wars, to any of the concepts or principles of Star Wars. It's just, you could have just made something called The Mandalorian without the Star Wars ever having existed, and it would work fine.
It's a spaghetti western. It's
like Firefly. Yeah, it's a western.
Right. Well, I mean, the Clone Wars. Maybe you need to watch a lot of them to really get into it. I like the way they treat Anakin. It's the only series in which you can actually sympathize and understand Anakin as a real character. And it's funny because it's completely animated. And actually, I think his voice is by the actor. What's his name?
Mark Hamill? Oh, no.
Can't remember his name now, but the guy who played him, it does the voice in the animated series, and it's great. So I think it really just came down to direction. Why Anakin as a character pretty much sucked for the first 3 films. But in Clone Wars, much more filled out. And it's great that Anakin has a Padawan. And her story gets really complicated. Unfortunately, they then did a live action series about his Twilight Padawan, and I forget her name now, but
Soba. Soba.
It was just not the acting wasn't right in that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like Clone Wars. It's not nearly as serious. It's very for kids.
Yeah, it's fun.
But
it's fun.
I found the storytelling in that was like better than the first 3 movies. which is maybe just too low a bar.
Yeah.
I still would love to see, like pre Sith Lord. Like I would love to see a series where they don't battle the Sith. The Sith are just exhausting at this point, right? I'm all Sithed out. I'm Sithed out. And what I want is Law and Order Jedi World, Law and Order Coruscant, where it's basically it's Briscoe. It's Briscoe and what's his name, but they're both Jedi. One's a Padawan, and they're investigating crimes by the Hutts. Dun dun dun. And one of them makes a lewd comment like, smells like lunch meat. Dun dun dun.
Is that a lightsaber you got there? Or are you just happy to see me? Yeah. Stupid ass jokes. But yeah, I don't know. I really like Andor. It fits in the pocket really well. Like I feel it actually shines a light backwards onto the Star Wars stuff and makes it deeper. Like it makes you feel good about the entire work, the entire thing altogether. It's like, yeah, okay. This is some of the serious stuff that kind of was tickling at the back of our minds when we were watching this stuff the first time.
Right.
Because I remember when it first came out, there's a big debate at our high school.
Really?
Yeah. Because I said, I love it. I thought it was great. All the other kids were like, no, it's not serious. And it belittles violence and things like that. And I said, yeah, but it's really good. I mean, everybody's like trampling each other to go see this thing.
Yeah, it was, I think I saw it at the Gramercy Theater in New York City at or either that or the Ziegfeld Theater. It might have been the Gramercy.
But it's a big debate. I mean, it's really like there is a big pushback from my classmates because I was really into it. I thought it was really good. Yeah. I took my dad to see it.
What did he think?
My dad came out and he said, for the first 5 minutes, I thought this was going to be the stupidest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. He said, but you're right. That's a really good movie. Hey. And as I mentioned before, is the first time, pretty much the only time I've ever gone to a movie where there was a standing ovation at the end. But I think that was 1977.
Yeah, when it came out.
Yeah, I think like everybody was sick and tired of, they finally were starting to see the end of the whole Vietnam, OPEC oil crisis, like that whole from 1968 to 1975, that whole miasma of unhappiness. And I think people were really ready to be cheering on the good guy again.
Yeah, in a fantasy series too, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. And so, again, there was right from the beginning, there was serious pushback that this is ridiculous and it's not adult entertainment. I don't think that was entirely unfounded.
I don't understand, like, in high school, and you were going to the Commonwealth School, right? In Boston?
Let me tell you.
They're too intellectual, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's fun. It's a sci-fi movie. It's like the quintessential sci-fi.
The headmaster was against it. Not against it.
Wow.
He was, but he says it's just, and he had fought in World War II. So he says it belittles violence and everybody's just a cardboard cutout. It's like, okay, well, then you're basically indicting the entire movie industry for the past 125 years because
my dad always hated the show MASH because he felt that it made light of the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with him, but he had friends who died there. He did not go overseas, and I think probably that's what bothered him most was that his friends went overseas and he didn't.
Yeah,
but he was drawing recruiting posters because he was an artist and he got drawn into that. He had been doing comic books, and they brought him in to make posters. So he was very lucky. But then that's a double-edged sword, when your friends have gone to fight and you didn't. And then here comes the show with Alan Alda, and they're laughing and making jokes in a MASH unit in Korea, which looks strangely like the Hollywood Hills. And my dad was just like, no, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of think that Andor is interesting because I think it's an attempt to sort of address a little bit of that.
Right. Like, really dark stuff going on all around it.
This is, it's not all lightsabers and Jedi. There's a lot of people, who suffer through these things. And here they are. And so anyway, I'm sure we've pounded that one into the ground.
Well, and I one other show, two other shows. I mean, I told you that I saw Dope Thief, and I did finish out the season on that. Right now, I've seen pretty much everything that's worthwhile to see on Apple TV, which is sad until Foundation comes back out, which I'm looking forward to. And the whole family is looking forward to that. My kids are totally into Foundation. The 3-part Emperor, and yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I know you're not crazy about it. I find the storytelling in it is really good. But I watched two other things. So I saw Dope Thief, which is super grim, but really well acted. And it turned out that one of the kind of scariest actors, one of the characters is in prison. And the head of one of the gangs in prison walks up to him and says, "I can get you anything. You know, you just come to me and I'll get you anything you want. I'll get you anything you want in here." And the guy is just like, "I don't know. I don't need anything. I'm all right." And then the assistant to the gang leader walks up to one of the main characters and says, "You don't say no to this guy." And that guy is my brother's new neighbor. The actor who played him is my brother's new neighbor in Jackson Heights in Queens. And he goes, he's a real sweet guy, but he plays a really frightening dude on TV.
Yeah.
It was cool to see that. The story is not all that uplifting, but it's really well acted. It's really well done. And the other thing that I saw was The Studio. That's also on Apple TV, I believe. And I'm up to date on The Last of Us, but I can't recommend it. But The Studio, I don't recommend it. It's so campy. It's squirmity, right? It's essentially a main character who makes a lot of bad decisions. Like it's like the increasingly terrible decisions of Todd Margaret. It's somebody who's appointed studio head, and I'll give away a little bit. Somebody's appointed studio head by the company that owns the studio, which is played by the guy from Breaking Bad, the main character from Breaking Bad. He plays kind of like the guy over the studio who basically needs to find a new studio head. Slots in Seth Rogen in the role. He goes, "One condition: we're gonna make a Kool-Aid movie with the Kool-Aid man. You know, the guy who breaks through the wall and says, 'Yeah, that's what we're going to make first.'" Now, Seth Rogen is like, his favorite director is Martin Scorsese, right? He's a taxi driver and he wants to shoot all in film. He's an artistic, he has an artistic vision. But pretty much the guy, the company that owns the studio, the CEO of that is like, "I just want straight ahead Kool-Aid, all Kool-Aid for kids, a big and bold Kool-Aid movie." So Seth Rogen walks up to Martin Scorsese, and Scorsese has an idea. It's played by Martin Scorsese. He goes, "I've got a movie I've always wanted to make my whole life, Jonestown." And the director goes, "Okay, but think about this. What if we call it Kool-Aid?"
What?
So it's sort of, and then things get much worse from there, right? So hilarity ensues, but it's also very uncomfortable. All of that is true. And I would say it's mediocre and funny. Nothing profound until episode 7. Episode 7, if you just watch that one, is super brilliant. I can't even describe it. I don't want to give anything away about it. Episode 7 of The Studio should be watched all by itself. It's really good.
Can you understand it in isolation?
Yeah, you totally can. Because, I mean, you just need to know kind of, watch the recap and you'll get enough. There's really nothing that, I mean, the fallout with Scorsese and everything is very funny, and awful. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is very funny, but episode 7 is absolutely brilliant.
Why?
Everyone starts to second guess themselves and things spiral so far out of control. It's ridiculous. And it's such a reflection of stuff that actually happens. Do you know what I mean? Where you've basically got everything working and everything's going in the right direction. And then somebody looks at it and goes, "Do you see what I see?" And then everybody looks and goes, "What do you mean? What? I don't see anything." And then you make one correction, then you make another correction. And before you know it, the whole thing is all just falling apart. It's so good. It's just a great episode. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to say anything about it. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Then I have also watched The Last of Us up to Up to the current. Do
Yeah.
you even know about The Last of Us?
Yeah, my daughter doesn't dig it. She watched the first season and she liked it a lot. And she says this one is not nearly as good.
Well, it's like, apparently they can't not do what they did. But what they did is basically what makes you want to stop watching. Like, well, it's like The Walking Dead.
Which I've never seen.
I finished out The Walking Dead. Total mistake. Nobody needs to do that. I talked to my brother about it, and he said, yeah, as soon as Negan shows up with a baseball bat and starts whacking people in the head, he goes, I was out at that point. Killing off major characters like that, willy-nilly. I just can't have my heart yanked around like that. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely kind of what happens in The Last of Us. But, I mean, it's a very well-made show. I just think you can go so dark that you just lose people. Lose a not insignificant number of watchers who are just like, nope, I'm not down with that now. I'm out. You've done it. I mean, yeah, it was very effective and it really affected me, and I don't want that. Watched a lot of crap. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, the two things I bring to the table, I don't know if I talked to you about this. I watched a podcast. I guess there's no such thing as watching a podcast. I watched a video. This guy called The History Guy, who actually puts on really good stuff. It's a little goofy. The bow tie is the symbol, and it has that faint whiff of old white guys talking about history. Not that I would have any experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he does he does interesting topics. He's not hitting the regular stuff. He goes in for very, very obscure stuff. You see tons of things on YouTube, which is, the 150th video about this historical thing that's been covered a million other times.
Right.
He doesn't. He goes after really obscure stuff, and it's very fact dense. But this was a little different, which is that he was talking about the transistor and where it came from. And he gets really worked up. He says there's no way you can conceive how many lives have been saved by this device. He says in terms of a fabricated invention, he said it's really impossible to think of anything quite like the transistor and how it has changed our lives. In the due course of that, he said something that was really, because I've been very much on this kick about the printing press and revolutions in communication. I'm starting to think of the universe in terms, human society is, we move atoms and we move information. They're sort of parallel economies. They're parallel developmental paths. There's energy sources. There's moving atoms around. There's techniques, but there's moving information. And I've been fascinated by the printing press, but I've also been especially fascinated by radio and its relationship to the rise of fascism in Europe in the 90s. And the history guy, said something in passing that I never thought of. He says, radio was the first major communication mechanism that didn't require literacy.
Yeah, aside from actually literally like Homer, like sitting around the fire.
Or but that's not
watching in the amphitheater.
But that's not mass communication. But like books and newspapers and billboards and all those things require literacy. Pictures don't. Pictures don't, but pictures, that's a whole other history. I mean, again, I'm also becoming much more refascinated by photography and the impact, because one of the things that Elizabeth Eisenstein emphasized in her enormously tedious book about tedious but wonderful book about the printing press is that it was not just a revolution in text, it was a revolution in illustration. They were using the printing press not just to print, like she said, up until that point, nobody did diagrams. Because it's bad enough trying to keep people from screwing up the letters when they copy a book over. Forget about trying to copy
no
the
tracing
diagrams
paper back then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like making a cassette of a cassette of a cassette. It's just going to fall apart in your hands.
You're copying it onto another deer skin. They had paper, but yeah.
Yeah. And so Eisenstein points out that the printing revolution the Gutenberg revolution was not just for text. It also made possible really good reproductions of diagrams. And she says that's one of the reasons why she believes that science took off after the invention of the printing press, because now you could accurately reproduce pictures and diagrams and charts. and illustrations of things. But anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole. The key thing is that, radio, the leader could speak directly into the ear of even the illiterate and tell them what the story was. So it is like sitting around the campfire, except there's 20 million people sitting around the campfire and they can all hear you perfectly well as you tell your story. So that sort of confirmed what I thought, which is that it was an epical change. The only thing with that same kind of power is like movies and television, moving pictures. You don't need to be literate to understand those either.
Yeah, that changes. I mean, yeah, it sort of includes a lot of people.
Yeah, that were never not included.
Before. Yeah.
Before. You're able to reach a lot of people that you weren't able to reach before in that way, that you weren't able to talk to before because you couldn't write things down. You use pictures. And if you look at persuasive stuff, persuasive publications in Europe during all the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and even up until the current day, like political cartoons are cartoons are very important, like the whole Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, the huge religious battles in Europe in the 1500s and 1600s. Cartoons and illustrations played a huge part of that because you did have to sway people, but you didn't have radio. You didn't have radio yet, and you didn't have motion pictures or TV. So you had to figure out, so how do we reach the illiterate? You got to do with pictures or live people go out. So anyway, I did that. That was good. And then and sort of along those lines, I watched a PBS documentary about Edwin Land, the man who invented Polaroid and invented the Polaroid camera. And that was fascinating because they really point out that Land, like he fits very firmly into the canon of these of a certain type of American industrial magnate or magnet, however you pronounce that word. So he's one of these guys who's completely obsessed with this one idea, and he's completely obsessed with changing society with it. Whatever.
If you get a photo right away, is that the idea, or the thing that will change everything?
It's going to bring people together. It's going to change the world. It's going to bring people together. And the documentary goes into a fair amount of depth about that. And a lot of people said, yeah, it did change. And it did bring people together because you could be with a bunch of people and take a picture right then and there. You would take pictures of really casual things. It wasn't the thing where everybody just sort of stands around and says, cheese, because it's going to take 3 weeks to get this film developed and get it back. So you're not going to take pictures of stuff that you don't really care about. The special explains a lot better than I do. But the interesting thing is that the echoes with the echoes of Steve Jobs are huge. Polaroid was the Apple of like the late 1960s, early
Kodak
1970s.
Actually had a lot of the things in place that Jobs used to make the Mac.
No.
Oh, wait, Polaroid and Kodak are two different.
Yes, they're two different companies. And no, what Steve Jobs got was the Palo Alto Research Center. Now you've scrambled my brains. It wasn't Kodak,
Sorry.
was it? What company was it? Xerox. It was the Xerox Park.
It was Xerox.
It was Xerox.
Totally wrong.
A very similar kind of company.
Yeah.
A company built around a revolutionary concept.
You can make copies.
The Xerox, the Palo Alto Research Center, the PARC. And really goes back to Douglas Engelbart, who's the guy who invented the mouse and Windows and icons and pull down. The WIMP interface, Windows icons, menus, and pull downs.
So I was living in Philadelphia, and I'd moved off of your floor and out into West Philly. I had a job with Carter Burnett. Do you remember Carter?
Yeah.
I mean, you did some recordings with him. He had a great voice. I had a song, Just Get Over It or something like that. He was my boss at some company. It might have been Deloitte & Touche or something. And they had a Xerox Windows with a mouse machine. And it made the Macintosh computer look like a toy. It was a much more complex, it was a much larger screen, really impressive unit. But the similarities were uncanny.
Well, yeah. Because Steve Jobs got the entire portfolio, got the portfolio patents from them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of Xerox PARC stuff. But anyway, Edwin Land, the guy invented Polaroid, which was based in Cambridge, I think, was where Polaroid started.
Yeah, the Polaroid building was until recently was right there.
Yeah, and he was just focused on this one idea: we're gonna make a camera that will take a picture that develops right there. And it's incredibly difficult to do.
Right.
And it was a company that was completely focused on engineering, plowed virtually all of its profits back into further research and development. Just this insane focus on this one concept of giving somebody a camera that they just push a button, it takes a picture, and you have the picture in your hand a minute later, or sooner, which was considered completely science fiction in 1945 or 1955. But he and his team, they figured it out, and he neglected everybody in his life. And he basically lived at his office. I got to the point where it starts unraveling, which is usually where I stop watching stuff, because I can sort of guess that one already. But it was, you have these people who make these silly statements like this is going to bring everybody together. And you think, what are you talking about? It's just a camera. And then you realize he's got a point. He's got a point. How? I'm sorry. I probably should have prepared better for this talk. I don't remember exactly. They watch it's not that long. It's on YouTube. It's like 50 minutes.
Okay.
And and you don't have to watch it like 2/3 of the way through, but it was the swinger camera. He came out with this camera that was it was hugely successful. The cameras. The first camera he came out with was, I remember my parents had one of those, one of the folding ones, the ones that were accordion pleated, and you had to wipe the picture with the little pink squeegee thing. Otherwise they would fade. I remember all that stuff. I remember like it was yesterday. That camera cost $85 in 1958 or something like that.
Yeah, which quite a bit.
It's like $1,000.
$700. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. But people bought it right off the shelves. And is hugely successful. But yeah, if I remember, I'll try to figure out what the whole theory was about why it brought it together. But they make a good point. But it's interesting how people come up with, but that's probably the point, is that people come with this invention and then they say, oh, this is going to do this aside. And you're like, you're so full. It's not going to do anything of the sort. And then it does.
Right.
And you're like,
right.
Yeah, I see now. It's funny. I was reading one article. One guy said, he was talking about AI, the eternal bête noire of today's discussions, AI. And what he was saying is that back when cars first came out, people were asked to predict what was going to be the effect of the automobile, like what's going to be the best effect on society. And the top winner was, there will be less horse manure in the streets. It'll be a huge change to society that we don't have all this horse shit in the streets all the time.
Yeah.
And the guy said, boy, you couldn't be more wrong. Yeah, that nobody's thinking about smog or, or the growth of the suburbs or, all these massive changes to society. Everybody's just really excited that there's going to be less horse shit in the streets.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think Ben Burns had an interesting comment. We talked with Damien last time. Not last week, but 2 weeks ago. And he did definitely agree with a lot of what Damien said, but he really disagreed in terms of the bias about AI. And if you join the Patreon, /Jim Infantino, to support the podcast, you can read Ben's comment about that. But it was, I thought it was, I mean, both of them make good points. It's hard. There's no way to know. There's also no way to know whether it will have, whether it will be a long-lived effect at all. It seems like it will be.
A long what?
Like, you don't know if it's going to be significant effect, right? At least this wave of AI, we don't know that this isn't going to be like, Pogs. It's still too early.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the one thing that's absolutely clear, I mean, what I felt when I first saw, somebody, my friend Bob said, take a listen to this. And it's, a recording of the Nelson Riddle Orchestra and Frank Sinatra singing Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And it was so good that it's like, okay, this is the end of Either it's the end of the best case scenario, it's the end of using the internet for getting your music at all. Or be more dire, it's the end of music, because you can't trust anything that's on the internet at all now. You can't trust anything.
Yeah.
So if it's
right. I mean, so at the point, right. And I mean, I think that's a great example because it's hard to argue. It does sound really good. Yeah.
How would you know it's, I mean, then you enter sort of the Library of Babel problem, which is how do you know it's not somebody who took the real thing and just altered it a little bit? You would never know.
Right.
You know, they swap two words. How would you know?
Well, let me read Ben's comment. Hopefully this is okay. I'm just going to take a piece of it. It says, with my day job at the bank, I'm getting Copilot shoved down my throat multiple times a day as a way to revolutionize my workflow. There are meetings touting how good it is to be used for programming, doing paperwork, even had one for making Excel better. I find it hilarious that during these meetings, trying to sell me to use Copilot more often, some random thing breaks or they don't get the result they want because this stuff isn't deterministic. The presenters just laugh it off and say, well, you know, sometimes you got to try a few times. And that's so frustrating because how is this supposed to save us? I think we need to be careful. This is a very hyped technology, you know, and there's a lot riding on it. There's a lot of money, a lot of gambling on AI being the innovation that the tech industry needs. And what if it's not? What if nobody likes it? Nobody wants to pay for it.
Well, that's a separate thing. There's certainly certain areas where it excels.
Yeah.
It's incredibly helpful, but
there's like, for example, there was a great show on Point about hiring agencies, right? When you get interviewed for a new job now, you get interviewed by an AI in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
And so companies are using AI to get new hires. And what they're finding, a lot of them, most of them, they abandon it because AI is filtering out for characteristics that if a human being did it, they would be labeled racist, sexist, and ageist, and against people with disabilities, because AI only cares like, oh, well, who's already been hired at the company? Or what are the hiring trends? Or what they look at the data, they kind of average it out, and that kind of whatever sort of has worked will work. And so if you blink too often, then you get, you're not going to be hired because people who blink more often than, 5 times every 10 seconds.
Right. If you're more than
are not good.
One standard deviation from the mean.
Exactly. Right.
You're out.
They don't tend to get hired, or, I don't know, people with Italian last names or whatever it is. But, stuff that's like way illegal to consider in terms of hiring is the way these AI hiring bots or interviewers do sort of handle things. And the problem is those companies don't share the information about how that didn't work out for them with other companies, because if they did, they would open themselves up for lawsuits because there's a huge liability when you let a robot do stuff.
Period. Yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of it's failing, and it's failing in an invisible way. It's going to take a long time before we realize how much of it actually got used and how much of it was discarded.
And I think it's I think it tends to be very, very scenario specific. There's certain scenarios where it comes in, it has already proven its value. And there's other scenarios where it doesn't. So you can't it's not a universal solvent.
Right.
It's going to be something very, very specific. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see.
Had enough for today?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's roll it out.
And away we go.